Welcome everyone to our second episode of Career Night for this semester. This is going to be another very exciting episode in our series. We even have a music in the background. I didn't know we had a soundtrack. But
Lo siento, profesora.
That could be something that we could incorporate in the next one. I was thinking that we have so many participants today, 43 students, that's great. Some of them I know it's in the Spanish major, some of them are double major in justice studies, paralegal studies. And I was thinking that this type of events is not only interested to people who are in that specific field. Sometimes we don't even know that that field existed. For example, what happened with transcreation last month. And it's a good opportunity. It's a nice opportunity for you guys to get familiar with another field that maybe it's an opportunity for you to develop a career in Spanish that you didn't even think of. Or sometimes it's not only the knowledge, but you are going to learn about techniques, about skills, about attitudes that are going to be successful for you when you start looking for a job, because the person, the guest in that episode told you about this thing that helped her, or that experience, or so it's a space that you can learn not only about the field that you may be interested, but techniques in general that can be very helpful for you in your career path. So tonight I'm very excited because we have another former student from our program in Spanish. So she's coming back to her alma mater now as a professional, which is very exciting for us, for all the faculty. Her name is Dragana Temelkov. She's a bilingual investigator in the Essex Adult Investigators Unit, Office of the Public Defender in the state of New Jersey. Her job mainly consists of interviewing witnesses and clients, serving subpoenas, testifying in court proceedings, and many other investigation-related tasks pertaining to all criminal cases assigned. And she's going to talk about that in more detail in a moment. She graduated from Montclair State University in 2015 with a Spanish degree with concentration in translation. She also double minored in Italian and paralegal studies. In January of this year, she graduated from Rutgers University with a degree in political science. Her focus was international relations with a concentration on immigration. So welcome, Dragana. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome home again, even though it's in this virtual way. I'm so happy to have you with us, and thank you so much.
Hi, Professor Vizcaino. Thank you so much for having me. Of course, this is, completely different than what it was 2 years ago when I first came for the Spanish Career Night. That was actually really successful because, just to start it off, we had an intern from Montclair State, it was an intern who minored in Spanish, who became one of our interns for, I believe it was an entire semester. And then, things turned around. She was supposed to stay a little longer with us. And then, COVID started. But it was definitely successful. And so hopefully this one turns out to be as successful, or even, more successful than what the last one was. So I'm just going to give, a brief overview of where I started. So I started Montclair State as a Spanish Spanish major with a concentration in translation, and I also double minored in Italian and paralegal studies. I at the beginning, I guess I was never I never realized what the combination of the Spanish language and paralegal studies, or just law studies in general. I never imagined that it could be such a successful or such a wanted field, especially when it comes to Spanish. But I'll speak about that a little bit later, because it was an unintentional combination that I began with, and then eventually became something that that many people that I've spoken with wish that they combined the legal studies with the Spanish language. I was very active while on campus at Montclair State. I was president of the Sigma Delta Pi Hispanic Honor Society for 2 years. That that was definitely a stepping stone for me, because it taught me many different many different things. I mean, starting from communication, meeting different people from many different cultures, and especially, management, of how to manage a particular I don't want to call it a field, but it was technically a different environment for me when I started. As I believe I was a sophomore at the time when I became first president, and having a Sigma Delta P allowed me to study abroad in Spain for a month in the summer, and that definitely is something that anyone who wishes to add something additional on their resume, I would definitely suggest having, it doesn't have to be, Sigma Delta P, doesn't have to be the Spanish Honorary Society. It can be any society, but I think having a position where one can manage and, and be in charge of certain positions or organizing events, definitely, when going for interviews, people look at that. People see how long you've been participating. People see what have you done, and I think it's definitely important to add these things. Don't just take classes and try to work and make money in college. That's definitely important, but I definitely would suggest, doing internships on the side, be active on campus, be close with your professors. You never know when you will need them. Try to do as much as you can on campus and try to build as many connections as you possibly can, because after you're done with college, you will think back and you will say to yourself, well, I could have done this and I could have done that, but then it's too late. So while you're on campus, while you're taking classes, and while you're working 35 hours or 30 hours, it doesn't matter how much you're working, because that's how much I was working. I worked at a bail bonds company at the time, just to build money and, pay my books and whatnot. But you always have that time when you can volunteer. And it's most internships may not be paid. Mine were not, but that it's important to add on your resume while you're in college. Once you're out of the 4 years of college, it becomes difficult, because at that point, when graduation is approaching, that's when you start thinking about, okay, now it's time for me to find a job. I have $50,000 in loans or $30,000 in loans. Now I need to, you're entering a different world where internship, I feel, especially in my case, it kind of becomes, you kind of have to ignore it at that point, because you really have no choice. And because it will back you up. Doing an internship for free while you have a degree in your hands, it becomes a little difficult. So I will definitely suggest for the people who are, either starting college or you're in the middle of college, definitely start working on internships, being in the translation world with Spanish, in the legal world. I mean, whatever environment you're in, social work as well. I mean, in our office, we have a lot of social workers, investigators who do social work as well. So it can be in any field, but definitely focus and try to build your resume while you're in college, and try to do as much as you can. You can't do it all, but you certainly can do enough to have a fresh start once you have that degree in your hands. So when when you're interviewing, they look at your resume and they can see that this person tried. Your GPA may not be 4, it may be a 3.4 or a 3.5, even a 3.2. That's okay. But if they see that you've worked, you have your internships in place, 2 or 3 internships, even if they're for 2-3 months, it's definitely a stepping stone for you to start. So that would be my I did a lot of internships while I was at Montclair. Now when I look back, I even think to myself, how was it possible for me to do that? Because now it would, forget it. I would never be able to do that now. What I did, back 7 years ago when I was younger and had a different mindset as to, what was important at the time. So, obviously there's certain things I would probably change, but it's never too late to start. So if you're thinking about doing an internship now, if you're a sophomore, junior, or even if you're a senior, it's definitely not too late to start. This is the right time. I was a paralegal minor, and that's actually how I ended up searching for, to get into a federal or state institution, because I had done so many internships in law offices, so many. I mean, I had 5 or 6 internships throughout my college career that I've done in private attorney offices, but because I wanted to go to law school, which I still am considering eventually, but that's how my interests of the law field and the Spanish language kind of became, started to slowly combine. I was required as part of my paralegal minor to intern any office. I mean, any law office, but it was a requirement. It was a class I had to take, and as well as an internship, a certain amount of hours. I'm sure if there's any paralegal minors here that people are aware of how that works. So since I had done so many private practice internships, I wanted to do something in the public sector. So I wanted to do either federal or state. I was applying to a lot of internships, and then the public defender contacted me. I ended up doing an internship. This was my last semester. So this is one thing I would suggest for any seniors that are here right now. If you are in your last semester, or September is your last semester, this is the fall semester of 2021. This is the right time to be looking for an internship, because chances are, especially in the state sector or federal sector, chances are if you're graduating in December of this year and the fall semester is your last one, if you intern for the entire semester, chances are you will get hired. Not a 100% guaranteed, but it's always a chance you'll get hired if you're in your last semester and you're graduating immediately right after. Because if you pause for a semester, they'll forget about you. They'll find someone else for the spring of next year. And then by the time you reach back and they contact you, or there's any opening, they have so many people coming in and out that it becomes difficult for them to keep track of who was good and who was better. So definitely my advice, that just happened to be my case, but no one advised me to do that. Mine just happened to be that way. So if you were in your last semester, I would certainly advise to start looking for internships, and because chances are that they may need you to stay after your internship is done, or they may ask you, or even if they don't ask. That was my case. So I interned with the Bergen Public Defender's Office. That was in Bergen County. I stayed there. That was my last semester, September of 2014, and I stayed there until April. Literally, when they hired me, it was May 1st of 2015. My last assignment was on April 29th of 2015. So literally, I only had one day of the weekend left by the time that I started on that Monday, and that Friday, if I'm not mistaken, was the last assignment I had to do at the Bergen County Jail. And it was actually a translation because the attorney refused to get anyone else, because I had been working for him for probably a few months on this homicide case that I was constantly translating for the client. And then it was one of the closing arguments he was doing in court. So he refused to take anyone else. And they called me the day before I started, the weekend before I started, to finish off the translation, because he just refused to work with anyone else. So, I guess knowing Spanish and showing how capable you are of interpreting, and even translating, well, I'll speak about that in a little bit, but interpreting is so important, because once you show that you're capable and you're not pausing and you're not thinking about how you're going to translate and you're taking it easy, attorneys feel comfortable, or any person really, not just attorneys, they feel comfortable with someone who's there, and they can make the client feel comfortable as well if they're unaware of what the attorney is saying. So having the capability of doing that is very, very important, and people are going to want you. So there can be 10 people in the office, in any office, who speak Spanish, but having that degree in your hand will help you so much it doesn't matter. You could be, I mean, in your entire family could speak Spanish to you at home. You could be a native speaker, born and raised speaking Spanish, but, you know, having that knowledge of the Spanish language, you know, knowing, you know, for the Spanish speakers here, knowing your palabras llanas, palabras estrújulas, you can't imagine how important that will be when you have to write a report. So I'm going a little bit off track, but because I feel like because I have so much to say. But I was hired right after the assistant chief investigator at Bergen County was Puerto Rican. He was a Spanish speaker, and he was so involved with the Spanish speaking cases in Bergen County, because they were getting so many, that, you know, I started helping him to develop templates and forms, like different things that the office didn't have before I started there. So I think that's how I kind of built a little bit of a background for myself about, you know, sharing my knowledge from, you know, the translation work I did in Profesora Vizcaíno's class. That definitely helped me so much, especially the legal class. I think that was crucial because, you know, I will never forget, you know, one of the investigators was translating something, and she actually put it on paper. Instead of saying el fiscal, she said el prosecutor. But that's because, you know, you have to get creative sometimes, because there's chances that the client won't know what's el fiscal, and, you know, you have to go along and say el prosecutor just so they can understand what you mean. But what I'm trying to say here is that you can't do that on paper. When you have to sign off on a report, on a signature, you can verbally translate just to make sure the client understands, you know, who you're talking about. But when it comes to writing a report and sending that report to court and having your name on it, that potentially will lead you to testify in court, and then the prosecutor will rip you apart as to how can you have someone who potentially speaks Spanish, but they really don't, and they can't distinguish between what el fiscal means or what el prosecutor means, and if that's really the same thing. You know, these are things that once you start working in that field, in any field really, and you start using the Spanish, you can be as native as you possibly think you are, because everyone in my office are natives, but they all come to me after they write a report in Spanish, because they want me to read it before they send it off to their supervisor or to their, you know, or to court where they have to close an investigation. So definitely, you know, pay attention in those classes, because even the stuff that I missed when I was in those classes, you know, now when I look back, it's like, wow, I never really thought that you would need, you know, palabras llanas, estrújulas, like, how do you know where to put the accent, right? But you don't think about that when you're in you know, Professor Soto, I don't know if he's still teaching that class, but you don't think about these things until, you know, you enter the professional world and you realize how important, you know, Professor Vizcaíno's class was in translation, and why she was giving you that B+, because it was just one word. Why are you giving me an 89? Like, why can't you give me a 90? It's just one word. But, you know, it's important, guys. Like, it's very important, the words you write, how you write them, because your name will be on it, and you don't want to be disqualified when you go to testify, or even, I mean, I'm speaking in my case because that's how we get disqualified in our field, you know, for writing something that's not correct and you haven't done the appropriate background investigation or research about if you could use a word, even in English or Spanish, it doesn't really matter. But anyways, I think I'm talking too much and I'm trying to like stay on track. What else? Where was I? So I did want to also mention, let me just make sure I'm not missing something. So I covered internships, but so once I was hired at the public defender's office, that was in May of 2015. In the first few months, I looked and researched. I know some people were not allowed to do it at the time, but things have changed. I actually had to take the BICAT exam. That exam is part of the, pretty much gives you the title of a bilingual investigator. So in order for you to, become a bilingual investigator and have that title, it's not, so you're not just an investigator and you're a bilingual investigator, so you begin to get assigned Spanish speaking cases, you have to have the title. Because God forbid you do have to go in court and testify, which happens a lot in our case. You have to show, the prosecutor has to be able to see that you have passed, you have the qualifications to interview people in Spanish, write documentation in Spanish, et cetera, et cetera. One thing for sure, I don't have to say this, I'm sure many people already know this, the Spanish language is in high demand across every market today. It doesn't matter what, I feel like, doesn't matter what field you're in. In our field, in the state sector, and it's, I don't have enough words to stress how important it is and how crucial it is and how dependable you're going to become in any place you go if you speak Spanish. And that's been my case. I have used Spanish probably, I don't want to say more. I don't want to say I've had more cases that I've had in English, but I could say that once I received the bilingual title, I've had equal amount of cases in Spanish, maybe even more, depending on the month or depending on the year. So in Essex County, I think in our sector, in the public defender's office, Essex County, Passaic County, and Hudson County have the most, the highest number of Spanish-speaking people in these three counties. No exclusions. Other counties haven't been excluded. I'm not excluding them. There definitely are Spanish-speaking cases in other counties as well. But if you're in Essex, and that includes Newark, Irvington, East Orange, Newark especially, and then Jersey City for Hudson County, and Bergen County I would probably place Bergen third, but Essex County and Jersey City are definitely the highest in Spanish speaking. So when you're applying for jobs, if you're applying, in Newark or Jersey City, knowing Spanish, if you have that on your resume or have a degree in Spanish, it doesn't matter if it's, obviously it's more important if you have a bachelor's with, in translation in Spanish, because that gives you more qualifications and you qualify more depending, of what the job is looking from you. But, being a minor as well, it's just having any type of education in Spanish is definitely, you will be put on the list, higher on the list than someone who speaks only English. I guarantee you, you will, with the Spanish, having the knowledge of the Spanish language will save you, will put you on the list and will save you from having to fight with, being on the same scale with someone else who only speaks English. And no offense to any of the English speakers that are here, of course, but I'm just trying to, to specify and explicitly, kind of stress out how important it is and how you don't know that yet. I'm sure if, for people who have been applying, I'm sure people have realized how important it is. But for the people who haven't experienced it yet, you will. And people will ask you, depending again, for what type of position you're applying, people will ask you, the level, how well you know the Spanish language, et cetera, et cetera. That was the case. That was the case with me. I think I was placed. The purpose of them placing me in the Essex County office was because of my knowledge in Spanish. Also, I am the only employee. Period. But it doesn't matter what department, attorney. I'm the only employee at the public defender's office who has a degree in Spanish translation. No one else does. So it's rare that, you will find places where there will be someone, with a Spanish degree. I'm not sure why, but for some reason, they've never seen anyone in our office or just the OPD in the state of New Jersey for the people who've been there for 20, 30 years with anyone, especially people who are, in headquarters and are, the directors of of OPD, they have never had anyone with a Spanish degree. So for some reason they're rare. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just becoming starting to become a trend of how, and people and companies and agencies are starting to realize how important it is to have it. Because being, again, I keep stressing this out, but being a native of the Spanish language is not enough. It's not enough. And I'm telling you this because I am not a native of the Spanish language, and it makes a huge difference if you've studied the language and just if you've spoken it at home. I'm a native of the Macedonian language, and I came here when I was 14 years old, and I didn't speak any English. But if you were to ask me to write an essay in Macedonian, I would totally bomb it, because I would need someone, with education and knowledge to look over it probably and rewrite the whole thing, because I won't be able to write it. So that's the difference that I always say, that being a native of the Spanish language is not enough. You have to have received the appropriate education, in translation, grammar, and vocab, especially knowing when to use the appropriate grammar and vocab is extremely important. And knowing just slang, native, being a Puerto Rican, from, family, if you were raised in a Puerto Rican family, or, Colombia, it doesn't matter. Having the training, the educational training is definitely a must if you want to advance professionally, and if you want to become dependable. If you want to become someone people depend on, doesn't matter where you go. So I do want to speak a little bit about how the Spanish has been helpful to me in the job that I'm doing right now. I want to mention one specific case about, it was one of my first cases. It was a homicide case, and it was, the client was from, don't quote me, I believe she was Ecuador or El Salvador, one of those countries. It was a homicide case, and none of the witnesses, the client obviously didn't speak Spanish. The attorney didn't speak English, but the attorney didn't speak Spanish. So I was assigned the case, and I had to interview about 15 to 20 witnesses at the time, and they were all Spanish-speaking witnesses. Not one person spoke English. The client didn't speak any English. So everything that was all discovery, everything that was all the people I found, all the discovery that was found, every paperwork, every document that was written had to be translated from English to Spanish or vice versa. Because in our case, if we're interviewing someone in Spanish, for example, we do I have to do the report in Spanish. I have to write the report in Spanish, but then I have to translate it in English. So it always goes both ways. So if I have to interview someone in English, the witness, for example, let's say the witness is English, but my client is Spanish speaking, I have to translate that. I can originally type it from what was originally interviewed, which would be in English, but then I would have to translate it in Spanish, because all discovery that's provided to the client has to be in their language. So I can't give a client, an interview in English when, it can't be done. He won't be able to understand it. So we need to make sure the client understands it, but also whatever documentation is provided to the prosecutor pending their case, the prosecutor needs to be able to receive the same information that the client is receiving, and vice versa, right? So in this particular case, I had to interview about 15, 20 witnesses. All interviews were done in Spanish. There were brief interviews, some were longer, some were shorter, depending on the information we were trying to obtain, but they all had to be translated in Spanish, and all this information in English, and then all this information had to be turned over to the prosecutor. And when you're doing that, you realize how important it is that you're working to represent someone who's being charged, for a homicide. You're trying to defend their persona, their case. You're trying to work to give them the appropriate representation, but you can't. That's when you realize that you either know it or you don't know it, or you need help to make it right. So, writing these reports and having to turn them over, and actually assisting the attorney almost on a weekly basis to go to the jail to interview to speak to the client and explain the status of their case. it's something completely different. So you're working with, providing interpretation, to the, while you're with the attorney and the client, and at the same time you're conducting investigation. You're trying to find as much information as you possibly can about this person, trying to find all these witnesses, and you're doing it in a community where many people are undocumented, right? So you have to work with the undocumented community who fears speaking to you because they're afraid they may get deported if if they come to court. So you have to, knowing Spanish, being able to speak to them in their language, it's so much more easier because they feel more comfortable with you. But sending someone who, who doesn't speak their language, it's definitely out of the picture. Like that, they will not even turn to speak to you. They will not even look at you. And communicating with these people constantly, speaking their language, it's so important, especially in the area where we live in, Essex County, Bergen County, Hudson County, this, the circle that, kind of, no matter where you go, people assume you speak Spanish. I don't know if any of you had ever experienced that, but they just walk in the store and they just start speaking. Hola, ¿cómo está? They don't think that there's a possibility that someone may not speak Spanish, and that's usually the case with me. They don't really think I speak Spanish. And then when I start speaking to them, it's like, whew, you feel that, relief on their face. It's like, oh, finally, you someone that speaks Spanish, or, so I've had that on many occasions. But in this particular case, we actually, the one most important thing that happened in this case was the final affidavit that we had to have the client sign in order to turn it to the jury. And the case ended up being dismissed. And this client actually had crossed the border from, through Mexico to enter the United States. And she's currently pending a U visa because she was determined to be a victim in the case of whatever had happened. I can't go into any details, but she was able, this is almost impossible to get. She was able to get a U visa on pending homicide charges, where, it was unbelievable because, she was a victim in this case. And we were able to prove that by speaking to, if we didn't have, the Spanish, the training, I guess, which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail at the end, the knowledge and the approach, also, knowing these cultural, knowing the Spanish language, but also seeing where these people are coming from, studying, people from Ecuador, from El Salvador, even Puerto Rico, Mexico, knowing where these people come from, the communities they come from, and trying to speak. We actually had a client from Mexico, but he was don't quote me, but he was from an indigenous community in Mexico, but he didn't speak Spanish, but he spoke a dialect of Quechua. I'm not sure what the dialect was, but we, with the help of Spanish, obviously, we were able to draw pictures for him and like trying to explain how where the jury will be, the prosecutor, and how, it just, what I'm trying to say here is that knowing the language, but also knowing the cultures, where these people are coming from, is also important. So if anyone is just, studying not the Spanish language, but if anyone's studying, I think they have a minor in Montclair now, right? It's cultural studies, Spanish. I'm not sure what
Latin American Latino studies.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So I think that's important too, like knowing where these people are coming from, the communities they come from, and do they speak Spanish? Do they not speak Spanish? What kind of language do they speak? It's a dialect of Spanish. So that's also very, very important. But being able to develop these techniques, since I've been at the Public Defender's Office, I'm actually in a committee right now. We're finally developing a translation, a training committee for bilingual investigators that has not been developed ever in the history of the Public Defender's Office in the state of New Jersey. Ever, I mean, period, ever. After passing the BICAT, whatever level the investigator ends up on the BICAT, that's how they get their cases assigned. But after that, you really don't receive any type of training. And I think they're just starting to realize that, of how important it is to put someone on the stand who has not received any type of training besides taking a BICAT exam, which is not, for someone who speaks Spanish, I wouldn't say is very difficult to pass. So I think now they're starting to they're strengthening things more, they're developing things more, which is why, you know, we've come to an agreement that we definitely need to receive the training. I mean, detailed amount of training that a bilingual investigator may need about, you know, how do you write a report? What do you put in that entering report? What's words that you try to avoid? What's words that you try not to put in the report, and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely going to be crucial, you know, especially in our department, because with time, me personally, I've been able to develop, with the knowledge that I've gained, especially in Profesora Vizcaíno's class, in that legal translation class that I did, it was part of the grad program as well. That was kind of like after it was a bachelor's, and then it was a 4-course translation certificate, I believe.
Yes.
And that legal class, legal translation class, definitely helped me with, I still use most of the material that we used in that class, and I've shared many of it with people in my office as well, and it's definitely been of great help. So I would definitely suggest to people who are in the program, and especially in the translation program, pay attention to those translation classes, because they're definitely you know, they'll be crucial for you one day if you do decide to, you know, to enter in a field where you want to combine your, I don't know, your social work major with your minor in Spanish. And you will see that no matter where you go, no matter what field you enter, Spanish will definitely be asked of you if you show that you know it. And people will become dependent on you. People will ask for you. I've had people call me from Camden County. Hi, I was told you're Dragana, that you have a template, a translated template about this, or this. Can you share it? And I've shared it with so many people that it actually got to headquarters, and that's how we ended up building this, we're in the process of building this bilingual training that we think will be very beneficial. And we've asked for Profesora Vizcaíno's help as well, that, you know, to help us to try to teach these bilingual investigators, who I know they're struggling on a daily basis. I struggle on a daily basis, because no matter how hard sometimes you try to help and translate, you will always encounter difficulties, especially in translation. I feel like interpreting, it's a little easier because you could have the computer with you, you can show them pictures, you can, whatever you don't know how to translate, it's much easier. But when it comes to writing translating reports, documents, where you have to put your name, that becomes part of, you know, a legal proceeding, especially in our case. Your name goes on it. Whatever you submit today may haunt you 2-3 years from today, and where you have to testify that, you know, that case comes back to life, and that has happened on many occasions. So we always have to be careful on that, which is why we've decided to, to build this training for bilinguals. And it's become such a big deal with everyone, even supervisors who are not bilingual speakers, who don't speak Spanish, who only speak English, because they're having even more difficulties, you know, helping their investigators, if, you know, first because they don't speak the language, and second because they haven't received the appropriate training. So that definitely is will be hopefully of huge help. So I don't know if I missed on anything, but I can definitely go. I think
you covered pretty much everything, but I'm sure that maybe some of the questions that the students have for you, maybe it will prompt other points. Okay. So now we're gonna start receiving some questions, comments, concerns, and of course you can do that in Spanish or in English. Si alguien tiene preguntas en español, comentarios, algo que no ha quedado claro. And you can also use the chat, and there is also a student of mine, Leon, who is checking the YouTube channel. There was a question, or someone wanted to ask something. Bella Scalzione?
Hi, yeah. So you said that you were a presidential member of like Sigma Delta Phi, right?
Yes.
So is that what like began your journey of getting into like Spanish leadership, and like is that what started it?
I would probably say yes. I was a member my first year when I started. I started taking. I remember my first grammar class with Professor Soto. I'm not sure if he's still teaching it, but that was my first class with him. And one day he brought in it was a bulletin, or he shared some information, and that's how I joined. So I joined the first. So I was a freshman for 1 year. I think I joined the second semester, not my first semester as a freshman. So once I joined the second, my sophomore year, which was my second year, I just, I was involved for, the first semester or so. And then I enjoyed what they were doing. I just enjoyed the environment. We had so many different people come on campus, which I'm sure many of you have attended. Before COVID, obviously, of course, we had such a, it was a great time. I mean, I can't even, I don't even have the words how much fun we had with all, preparing the Christmas parties. And I met so many people that I am still in touch with today. But I definitely would say that that's where my journey started, because I was on campus 24/7. I was sleeping in Professor Soto's office. I was there all the time. I was doing my homework there. I was tutoring there. I actually tutored Spanish as well. I mean, I was there all the time. There were so many things that if I go back and see it, you could see they're done from the people that were in my group, with Steven and Yeti and like all these people that I'm still good friends with today. But if you have the opportunity to join Sigma Delta Pi, do it now. I studied for free, almost for free. I barely paid anything, when I went to study in Spain for a full year. I think I paid my ticket only, and probably an extra $1,000, because they paid a good amount for. Don't quote me, I don't remember, it was a while ago, but they definitely gave me a good scholarship, because I applied as president of Sigma Delta Pi, and we had done so much work. I think we were doing, if I'm not mistaken, probably 15 is too little. I'd say 20 to 25 events a year we were doing. We were inviting people, we volunteered for the New Jersey Food Bank. I mean, whatever was going on in that period, we were doing it. We had so many empanada sales. I was there, and that gave me the opportunity to actually see professors too. So, being on campus for so many long hours, I'd say, and having the opportunity to see the professors of the Spanish department there, Schmidt Hall I feel like it was my second home at the time. So I was always there. You could always see me in the hallways, and that was definitely what kind of started where it all started, I'd say. It kind of gave me even more, strength to continue and do more. And I wanted to do so much more. I kept doing more and more. That, it got tiring at one point, but it was so great. I loved it.
Yeah, that honestly sounds like,
I'm sorry.
That sounds great. I actually got nominated to become part of a national leadership society as a presidential member as well. And everything that you just said is really motivating me to join that, in addition to everything that they have to offer. It sounds really great.
No, you should definitely do it. I think it would look great on your resume, because it did on mine for sure. It's definitely, go for it. If you could fight to get president, even secretary, vice president, doesn't really matter. If you get something on the committee and get involved, because if you become secretary this year, you could become president next year. That's all it takes. If you can't become president this year, then you can certainly do it next year, or the following semester, whatever, however the society works. But definitely do it if you could do it. And Sigma Delta Pi, for the people who are eligible, I don't think you don't even need an eligibility for Sigma Delta Pi. I think Professor Edstrom is doing it now, right? So definitely do it. You'll improve your Spanish too, because you'd get to speak Spanish more often than you probably do. So I definitely suggest joining. It was great. It was one of the best times in college for me.
There is another question. I don't want to interrupt, but we have several questions in the pipeline. Yukari?
Oh, yes. Hi. Can you hear? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes,
Oh.
we can hear you.
Yes,
Hi, good evening. Hi, good evening. So I kind of have like two questions. So my first question will be like, is it really necessary to like join into a translation or like a language major or a minor? Like if I want to get like the bilingual in my resume, you know?
I mean, again, I think that depends on on the in what environment you're going to work in. I mean, speaking from my personal experience, there are other people in our office who are investigators who've been there for many years. They don't have any translation background. They're just natives of the Spanish language. They've passed the BICAT, which is, a requirement to become a bilingual investigator. But yet again, I said it many times, I think maybe because I'm not a native, I'm saying this, but I do think it's crucial to have a training, some type of training of the Spanish language, some type of background where you've been taught by professionals of how to do certain things. It doesn't matter if it's in the legal field, it can be in the medical field. You could work in a hospital and you'll still need it as much as you need it in our environment, in our department or in the public defender's office. I mean, I frequent University Hospital in Newark all the time. I'm there like every other day, not now, but especially when we were doing before COVID. I mean, doesn't matter what way you turn, you need Spanish. And working in medical records in University Hospital, you're gonna have to prepare documents that release forms, any type of I can't think of any at the moment, but release forms, or you're going to be dealing with people who speak Spanish all the time. So just having that knowledge, it puts you right on above many other people who don't have it. Just having that degree, even if it's a minor, if you don't think you can do major in Spanish, minor in Spanish, the fact that you're a native does not allow you, I feel, in my personal opinion, does not put you above any other people who have studied it. You know what I mean? So I definitely think it's an extra. In my case, it's an extra, and I think it continues to become extra because I mean, the professors can agree with me. I don't think the how do I put this? I don't feel like there were much. I don't feel that it was as much of a requirement for people to have, or it was not wanted as much as it is wanted now for even people to want to study Spanish. I feel like people want to do it more now because they've seen how crucial it is and how important it is to have it than it was 10 years ago when I was in Montclair. So I think as time goes, it's going to become much and much and much more needed than it is today or than it was 10 years ago. So if you have the opportunity to do it, I definitely go for it. Don't feel comfortable that you're a native, that you're okay. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Yukari, you have a second question? Or should it was answered?
No, I also have a second question. So like the program that you told us that you used to do like when you were in college, will you repeat the type of program you joined where you said like you joined for free?
Is that the Honor Society, the Sigma Delta Pi Spanish Honor Society?
Well, I'm not entirely sure because I also got the same invitation with the national leader of Honor Society, but I'm kind of like skeptical about some certain things like that. They just come out and not even knowing how even they came up. So I was kind of like wanting to make sure like which programs are like that I need to join.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just do your research, right? So, Montclair State, I'm sure has even more societies than it did when I was in Montclair State today. So it depends on your interests, really, what you want to do and what kind of activities or extracurriculum activities you're interested in doing. I definitely do my research and see if that would be something that would fit you, because there's also sororities, fraternities, that's completely different than Sigma Delta Pi, the Hispanic Honor Society that I was in and that currently still exists in Montclair. So do your research, right, and see if that's something that would interest you. And you can always go to
Okay.
Dr. Edstrom for more information.
Who is here with us.
Yeah, she's here.
Okay, we have another
Thank you so
question.
much.
We have another question from Madison.
Hi.
No.
While you were speaking, you made me think about like I'm somebody who struggles with Spanish a lot. Oh wait, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm somebody who struggles with Spanish a lot, but I'm an education major, and just from working at daycares, and my mom owns like a Spanish speaking bar in Dover, if anyone knows where that is. Makes me always want to like minor in English as a second language, because I don't think I can do Spanish, just like being honest. Do you have any advice for someone like me who would want to like keep working on Spanish and hopefully like something like how you said you're creating a template for like your job, something like that for education to commute, not commute, like just talk to parents.
Okay. I mean, I've never worked in the educational world or field, if I may say, but I personally I didn't speak any English when I came here at age 14. My dad didn't. And, you know, when my parents were coming, you know, they're not Spanish speakers, but I do remember when they were coming on campus, you know, to school, you know, to try to be there, you know, when parent teacher conference was, you know, was there, and they wanted to be there, but they couldn't, or sometimes they just couldn't understand what they were saying. I mean, I definitely can relate to what you're saying and how you would want to help or approach that kind of work. But I just think that, I mean, just working on it more every day, every time, if you really want to focus on it, I'm pretty sure that you will get there. I mean, even working in an environment where you're constantly surrounded by, you know, parents who are Spanish speakers, you know, you don't have to know it all, but, you know, just adding every time a little bit more and more, it's definitely helpful for you. And I think that, you know, the parents would even feel more comfortable being around someone who, at least, you know, if you don't understand them fully, but at least you try to understand them as much as you possibly can. And I think we can all, you know, agree that does exist in almost every school in New Jersey, where we have parents who have difficulties, but they want to be there, you know, they want to be there for their children. So I definitely don't leave it as I am not good at it, or I can't do it, or I don't know if a minor is going to be enough. We had many people when I was in Montclair who were in the same, people that I'm still, in contact with, who are in the same situation, that, oh, but I don't know Spanish. I've never learned Spanish. I don't know if I should do it. And, and they did it. And I know one particular person who's using it today, and she works for one of the city councils. So she still uses it today. So definitely don't quit. If you want to become a minor, you could do it. And it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have of the Spanish. And I'm sure no matter how much you learn, even if it's more than expected or less than you expected, it will help you to in your educational field, or whatever you decide, whatever you continue doing later on.
Right. And Madison, we have here in this event, Professor Dr. Estrom, who is the person, she's the coordinator of the Spanish education program, and maybe she can say a few words about what you were asking or your concern.
Hi, Madison. I think as a fellow non-native speaker, I understand the feeling of never thinking that you're good enough, never being able to speak well enough. And I think in the field of teaching, there's some room. It depends if you want to be certified in Spanish. If you want to be certified in Spanish, you have to reach a certain level. There are some exams, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. If it's a matter of being able to reach out to Spanish-speaking families, I think that even just some basic conversational skills really mean a lot. You can kind of meet in the middle, and they see that you care and you're trying. And I think that's very valuable. So it's kind of I think the answer to your question is very individual, depending on what exactly you're thinking. So I'll send you my email address, and I'm happy to chat with you sometime about your specific situation.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I think Liam had a question also.
Hi, I have a question in regards to like promoting yourself in like your industry. my question is, how do you promote yourself properly and not look arrogant? And you want to make sure like you get all these clientele and stuff like that.
Okay, so in my field, you know, I'm not in the private sector. I'm in the public sector, so that, you know, we always have to make sure we distinguish between, you know, you don't want to be cocky either, right? You don't want to, you know, but it's not, with us, it's not about the clients. With us, it's more about, you know, your coworkers and the people you're working with. So, you know, you're always going to find that. I feel like no matter what job you go to, once you start to show your side and you start improving and you become a better or a little better or more better or extra better, whatever the case may be, than the person next to you or the person who's been there for 10 years and you've only been there for one, right? That you will see that no matter where you go. And I feel like I did see it a little bit in my case, because when I started, you know, I don't think they were expecting to see someone who's not a native of the Spanish, who has a Spanish degree in translation and was capable to do more things without that, you know, without being at their fault, because they just, that's how much they know, and that they just got a degree in a different field, right? But it's definitely a competition, guys. No matter where you go, it's always going to be a competition, and you always have to, it's for that reason that I feel like you always have to make sure you stand out. You know, you're there for your coworkers, they're there for you. It's always going to be a competition no matter what. And I can tell you from experience that in our field, for example, this is actually a good question, because in our field, once the let's say the state exam comes out, and that exam is when promotions come up, when people are needed, when people are retiring, new people are needed. We go on 3 lists. We go on the regular list, which is because you've been there for 5 years and you've passed, been there for 3 years and you've passed the exam, but you have a certain score, right? So if 60 people take it this year, if you score the highest, you're going to be placed on top 1. But if you are bilingual, you're going to get placed on a second list. If you're not a bilingual, you only go on 1 list. So you see the advantage that you're getting here, and people who are not on the bilingual list will obviously, you know what I'm trying to say here. You know, there's going to be, you know, not jealousy, but, you know, it really becomes, you know, a competition where without you wanting, you cause that competition just because of the qualifications you.
But again, which I wanted to mention this as well, there's also a third list. And that third list is if you have a master's degree. And I realized how important it is to have a master's when I
started to become eligible to take, you know, to take this exam. And when I started to see how in my first and second year, people were getting promoted because, you know, they would get promoted, they would get placed on a third list because they're, you know, they scored high, they're bilingual, and they have a master's. So this is just an advice for me. I just got my master's. I went back for it after a couple of years. If you have the capability of getting your master's, doesn't matter what it is, just pick a field that you love, pick a field that you're interested in, pick a field that you enjoy. It can be Spanish. You can get a master's in Spanish translation. I mean, literally in anything. You will have more advantages and more opportunities than people who don't have it. And nowadays, I feel that just having a bachelor's is not enough. So if you have the opportunity to go and get a master's right after your bachelor's, do it. Because if I could go back, I would do it right away. I wouldn't pause. I wouldn't wait, you know, and I would go right away, because I could have been somewhere else right now if I would have gotten my master's, you know, the time I had finished my bachelor's. But going back to your original questions, yes, there will always be competition. I've seen it. I see it today. I think we all see it. It's always there no matter where you go. So just try to be better than the person next to you. That's what I always say. I mean, just try to be better. You know, your coworkers can be friends too, but try to be better, because at the end of the day, it's your career. It's, you know, it's your you're on the line, right? So if you can be on 3 lists and your best friend coworker can be on 1, then so be it, right? But you know, always try to do more than your coworker, because you will get somewhere faster than they will. And it doesn't matter if they've been there for 10 years, because I see it all the time. And I've seen people who've been there for 10 years that haven't really done much, but I've seen people who've been there for 5 and they're already supervisors. So, you know, it's definitely a competition no matter where you go.
Thank you very much.
And regarding what Dragana said about doing the MA right after, we also have a program, a BA, MA combined, which is very convenient, because instead of doing your BA and then your master, you can do everything in 5 years instead of 6, 4 of the BA and 2 of the master. We have a last question. It's from Tetsuo, who is a student in my translation program and justice studies. So the perfect combination here. Tetsuo.
¿Le puedo hacer la pregunta en español?
Sí,
Claro.
Ok. Hola, Dragana. Su presentación fue muy informativa, me encantó mucho. Tengo una pregunta sobre... usted dijo que la traducción es definitivamente una de las habilidades y certificados más importantes que uno debería tener, siendo como una investigadora bilingüe. Quería saber si hay otras habilidades o cosas que uno también debería aprender en esos tipos de carrera que usted diría que es también importante.
Ok, vamos a ver. Específicamente en el departamento en el que yo trabajo, claro, ser una investigadora bilingüe es una de las cosas más importantes primero, ¿no? Eso es primero. Saber el idioma, saber cómo escribir, saber cómo hablarlo, saber la gramática correcta, saber todo eso. Pero también uno tiene que aprender y saber cómo comunicar con la gente, ¿no? Si estamos hablando, como mencioné antes, si estamos hablando de la comunidad indocumentada, ¿no? La gente que no tiene papeles, la gente que está preocupada, uno tiene que saber y reconocer cómo hablarle a esta gente, ¿no? Uno tiene que asegurarse que al hablarle, asegurar esa persona que no se preocupe, ¿no? Que tenga la certeza que tú no vas a dañarlos en una manera que van a terminar teniendo que venir en corte, ¿no? Tener esa certeza de, ¿cómo me explico? En una parte emocional, ¿no? Poder sentir y poder sentir la angustia de ellos, especialmente en el caso que yo mencioné antes, los testigos que yo tuve, los 15 o 20 testigos que yo tuve que entrevistar, ni uno de ellos tenían papeles, tenían documentos, todos eran gente indocumentada, de la comunidad indocumentada de nuestro estado. Y yo pienso que al saber y uno estar consciente de la situación de ellos y saber cómo hablarle, saber qué decirle cuando uno le habla, que si ellos me dicen, muchos de ellos, yo recuerdo, me dijeron, pues yo no te puedo dar mi fecha de nacimiento, solo te puedo dar mi número de teléfono. Y yo recuerdo que yo les dije, no, está bien, no se preocupen, no necesitamos ningún tipo de información personal que los pueda eventualmente identificar como persona. ¿Me entiendes? Eso, hablando de esa comunidad específicamente, yo pienso que al saber la situación de ellos y también aprender más de ellos, saber de dónde viven, en qué comunidades viven, con quién se juntan, la cultura que tienen, qué tratan de evadir, que no quieren hablar con la policía, por qué no quieren hablar con la policía. Y pienso que al familiarizarse con esa información es importante si uno está trabajando con gente con hispanohablantes, pero uno tiene que saber cómo preguntar si alguien es indocumentado, ¿no?
Ujú.
¿Cómo yo pregunto a un testigo que yo tengo que si ese testigo es documentado o indocumentado? Hay mucha gente que no quiere decirte, que no quiere hablar, que no quiere darte ninguna información del estatus de ellos, de dónde son, qué hacen, si tienen papeles, si no tienen papeles, cuál es su estatus inmigratorio, ¿no? Eso es muy importante, especialmente en Newark, donde yo estoy situada. Es muy importante saber la situación de la gente, informándose, saber y también los recursos. ¿Qué tipo de recursos están disponibles para esta gente? ¿Dónde pueden ir a encontrar, si califican de, no sé, food stamps o cosas así? Si necesitan seguro social, si necesitan, tuve un caso donde tuve que ayudar a una persona para conseguirse un tax ID para poder pagar impuestos, ¿no? Todas esas cosas, que saber cómo, yo he tenido que hablar con ICE también, USCIS, la oficina inmigratoria que tenemos de inmigración, disculpe, que tenemos en Newark. Todas esas cosas, agencias que son disponibles para gente indocumentada en nuestra región. Hay mucha gente que no los conozca, que no lo sabe, que no saben cómo encontrarlos y con quién hablar y cómo ayudar a esa persona. Y así que yo pienso que específicamente hablando de la gente hispanohablante o la gente indocumentada, es muy importante saber más que solo el idioma de ellos.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
I think I was mute. Thank you so much for this detailed answer and for everything that you share with us, Dragana. I think it has been very revealing, very helpful, and we cannot thank you enough for your time.
You're very welcome. I will share my business card. Let me see if I can, for everyone, I'll share my business card. If anyone is interested, we may have some openings in Essex County from what I was told, internships. I'm not sure how they're gonna do them now, given the COVID circumstances, but I'll share my business card and I'll be more than happy to share any information or if anyone has any questions down the line. They may do remotely. I'm not sure how they'll do that, but it's always a possibility because I know they always need people in the office. We had someone, as I mentioned at the beginning, from 2 years ago, Naomi, she came and she loved it. She was out on the field with me all the time. So I know she enjoyed it, but too bad COVID started and then we couldn't even try to get her a job.
Okay, so and if anyone has any questions, you can always reach me via email or Dr. Strong or Dr. Galope to get more information, or if Dragana needs to share some information.
Let me know if you got it. I just sent it.
Yeah. It's in the chat, right? Yes.
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 Great. Okay, so thank you so much for another exciting episode.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you to everybody who participated. And
Thank
be
you for your
safe.
time.
And thank you.
Thank you.